And welcome to Her Shakti Effective Communication Session 2. Today, we're all about the art of listening and comprehending what you've listened to. Now, before we get into this session, right, it is very important for me to make this about myself. So, hi again. My name is Arti Venkatesh, in case you've forgotten. I'm here because I love to communicate and I pretty much made a career out of it. I am a resume expert. I am a social media strategist. I am an email marketer. I'm basically a writer at large. I write all sorts of content, but the core of my work lies in helping brands and people communicate effectively. And I've been doing that for about 4.5, 5 years now. And in case you wish to stay in touch with me after the class, I'm just dropping my contact and my links on the chat box over here. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let me quickly tell you what you can expect in today's session. So there are three key things we're going to be discussing in today's session. One is active listening. We're going to learn all about listening, all types of listening, how you can actively listen, how you can communicate to somebody that you're actively listening, and all of that stuff, and why it's important, etc. And then we're going to go into the jargons that you might use at the workplace, the corporate jargons as well as technical jargons. And then we're going to learn how to deliver impactful presentations at work. Now, please, for this part alone, right, I request you to pay close attention to how this particular deck is structured. Deck as in this presentation is structured in terms of design, in terms of content. Make note of all of it. And before we go into the impactful presentation section, I need you to tell me what worked for you and what did not. Okay. I'm going to ask you that. Okay. Moving on. Let's get started without any further delay. Are you ready? I want to hear yes. Are you ready, guys?
Yes. Yes.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Am I going to have a participative class or not?
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
I want more noise.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that
Yes.
the loudest you can be, guys?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
see, that's what I want. Okay, awesome, great. Okay. Speaking of listening, listening is a great skill. It builds trust. It encourages problem solving. It encourages better communication, but it takes practice. It's more complicated than we might think. But the problem is most people do not think about it. It is like second nature to us to hear what people are saying. But there is a very clear difference between hearing someone and listening to them. Can someone tell me what the difference is between hearing someone and listening to them?
Listening means participating in the conversation, taking it
Okay.
forward.
Okay.
Maybe
What is the line? What draws the line? What draws the difference between hearing and listening?
acknowledgement.
Okay. So when someone's listening to you, they acknowledge the fact that they've heard you.
They are understanding also. Listening means you are understanding thing. Hearing is like randomly. You are not paying attention to it. So there are so
Okay.
many voices all around
Okay.
coming.
Understanding is a differentiating element, is what you're saying. Okay,
Listening is
great.
your understanding. Your presence of mind is there.
Right. That makes sense. Also, guys, if you're beginning to talk, right? See, I'm projecting my screen. So only 4 people, including me, meaning only 3 people are on the top of my list. Those are the only 3 people I can see. So I don't know who's talking. Before you talk, like tell me who you are. Okay. Like hi Aarti, Swati here, Mona here, like that. Okay. All right. Great. So that is the difference, right? When you're hearing someone, it's just that it's like noise, right? Like the sound of the fan, sound of the AC, sound of someone talking. When you're listening to them, like you guys rightly pointed out, it is actually paying attention to them. It is contributing to that conversation. It's making stuff two-way, either in terms of understanding it or responding to it also, right? Good listening will enable people to tell what they want to say in the way they intended to say it in the first place. Okay. Now, moving on, I just want to begin this session with a lovely quote that is very deeply meaningful by an author and a professor of linguistics called Deborah Tannen. This says to say that a person feels listened to means a lot more than their ideas getting heard. It is a sign of respect. It makes people feel valued, right? So, right. So let's first begin by understanding the types of listeners or listening there is out there. Since the time a child is born, he or she is taught how to read, how to write, how to speak, how to walk, how to eat, how to clean up after themselves, and a lot of other things. But no one ever teaches a child how to properly listen, right? And not just hear what somebody's saying. Sometimes children don't even hear what you're saying. They're just in their own world, right? Uh, so in developing listening skills is very important, even if it's a little later in life. It is very, very important because you'll be better able to own your ability to focus. Own as in not O-W-N, H-O-N-E, meaning to enhance, like the H is silent. So it is H-O-N-E, to enhance your ability to focus, your enhance the quality of your responses, the quality of your input to somebody. And it's a very invaluable skill at the workplace, right? But please pay attention to this part, because by the end of, after I finish explaining to you what these 5 types of listening are, I want you to open the chat box and tell me how you identify yourself, what type of listener you are at home versus what type of listener you are at the workplace. Okay, I need you to be honest, and I need you to tell me what defines you at home and at the workplace. Okay, to begin with, passive listening. Does anyone have any idea what a passive listener sounds like? What does the word passive mean? We also
Means
you know,
you're doing
uh,
some work and hello Aarti ma'am, I'm Sneha here.
hi Sneha. Yes,
Simultaneously you are simultaneously you're doing something, some work, you are into some work, but simultaneously you are listening. So that is passive.
absolutely. See, most of us do a lot of passive listening in our everyday life. A passive listener is pretty much present in body only. Their mind is elsewhere. They're either doing something else, or they're just lost in their own thoughts, whatever it is, right? They hear the speaker's main points. It's not that they don't listen. They hear the speaker's main points, but little information gets through to their head otherwise. They know how to nod. They know how to reassure someone enough to just protect themselves from being caught for their lack of attention, right? They just know enough to say the right words and nod, and just to that in just so anybody else in the room isn't entirely aware that they are actually not paying attention. Passive listening, however, prevents listeners and speakers from truly connecting with one another, and it makes for very one-sided conversations, although it is the most common type of listening. We use passive listening a lot of times in life. During dull meetings, those annoying, pointless meetings that could have literally been one sentence emails, right? Sometimes I'm sure you're gonna endure a lot of those when you get back to work. People just want to show to the world that they're working, so they just randomly call you in for a meeting, although it's absolutely necessary. It's gonna have absolutely unnecessary, and it's gonna happen, right? You're gonna be so bored to death. So in meetings like that, you're gonna be passively listening. Um, we passively listen to conversations with people we don't really like, or even conversations with our loved ones when we're distracted, when we're multitasking, when we're doing something else, when we're stressed, when we're anxious. We end up passively listening. Selective listening. Selective listeners seem to filter what they hear through their own worldview, so that they only hear what they want to hear. They already have an idea about what they want to hear, and I mean, subconsciously, it acts like a filter, like how you are clicking pictures on Instagram, Snapchat, or even your phone. You add a filter to look better, right? That's exactly what a selective listener does to whatever they're hearing. They want it to be sugar coated. They think that's what it is, and that's all, right? They lean into their own beliefs, thoughts, and feelings uh, to a point where even if the speaker's point is misaligned with what they want, they end up hearing exactly what they want. This means even when a speaker conveys a message that contradicts with these biases, The selective listener manages to unconsciously twist and turn that message to fit their needs. For example, imagine I'm asking you to do a little assignment, okay? And you put a lot of time and effort into it, and you think it's great, okay? So when you turn it back in and I look at it, I come and tell you, hey, great job on that assignment. I think you've done, I think you've put in a lot of effort, but you've missed these 2, 3 points, and there are these XYZ areas of improvement. If you're a selective listener, your brain's going to shut down the moment you hear, great job, you put in a lot of effort. You're going to ignore what the rest of it is. Okay. Now, when a listener is so ingrained in their beliefs, they will be unable to hear any messages that counter them. And when it's finally drilled into their head, their reality can be severely stunted. This often happens at times when, we're at interviews, we're at salary negotiations, we're at appraisal meetings. We want a positive answer, but when the reality turns out to be different, it takes a while for it to hit us. Can you guys just hold on for a very quick second? I'm just getting a very sorry. So, like I was saying, right? We're going to be at a point where we don't want to hear what's being told to us. But when we are a selective listener, it takes time for the message to hit us because we're so, stunted by what is in front, what we want to hear. And it hits harder when we actually realize the reality, right? So it can severely stunt what repercussions it has later. Now, moving on to an attentive listener. An attentive listener places a lot of value on every word spoken by a speaker. Attentive listeners are getting it all in. They're even remembering it. However, just because they're able to repeat back to you what they said, what you just said, it doesn't mean that they're truly understanding the meaning of what you're just saying. Okay. For example, when I'm at a meeting, right? Sometimes when I'm given the, how do I put it, the responsibility to take down the minutes of the meeting, I'm very focused on noting everything down. I can probably even read it out, repeat it. I wouldn't have missed anything. But if you ask me what I've understood, what the final things are to be done, I might not know because I was so focused on noting it all down. I don't know what I didn't process it to understand it, right? Attentive listeners focus primarily on the words being spoken and they take it at face value. So if you take it a little too far, sometimes you might even miss, you can't even tell apart between insults and compliments or, acknowledgements rather. For instance, okay, imagine I am a regular late comer, okay, and you are my boss. I come and tell you that I'm late. I'm going to be late for whatever reason. And you're saying, yeah, of course. I'm sure there's something so important for you to deal with that you're coming late today also, is what you're telling me. If I'm an attentive listener, all I process is the fact that you've said yes. I don't see that you're making a sarcastic tone. This could have repercussions later. None of it is processed, right? Moving on to empathetic listening. Empathetic listeners are the best because they are very effective in terms of picking up the emotions behind what's being told. Not only is an empathetic listener actively engaging in an individual's words and messages, they're also actively paying attention to the subtext. They're actively paying attention to the emotion behind words. These listeners can put themselves in another person's shoes and understand their perspective. For instance, you're at work and your coworker looks like she's in pain. Okay, like she's not able to sit, she's moving, she's just doing this. Okay, you can see that she's physically not comfortable. You go and ask her if she's doing okay, and she says, Yeah, I'm doing well. I just have to get this done. Okay. If you are an attentive listener, you're just gonna hear, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just gonna get this work done. I'm focused on my work. If you're an empathetic listener, you pick up on her body language, you pick up on how she's saying it, you pick up on the fact that she's doing this, you pick up on the fact that you can see from her face that she's physically in some pain, and you sit her down and you ask her, what's wrong? How can I help you? Right? You place yourself in that person's shoes. Fifth one, active listener. An active listener is a combination of all of this in the right quantity, right? For example, an active listener is an active participant in the conversation and the message. They effectively listen because they not only listen to every single thing that's communicated, they engage with that message too. They ask questions, they offer input, they understand the subtext, they stay on topic, they use body language to show someone that they are actually receptive to what the speaker is saying, right? They give that real-time feedback. Now, at the workplace, okay, let me go on a little later. Open the chat box and tell me what kind of listener you are at home and what kind of listener you were at work when you were working. Very, very quickly, we do not have time. Mona is selective at home, empathetic at the office. Good. Sorry, Swati is selective at home, empathetic at the office. Good. What else? Come on, guys, quickly. Okay, Ankita is passive at home. Correct. Honest answers. That's what I like. Okay, I have a lot of answers at once. Empathetic at the office, selective at home. Empathetic at home, selective at office. We have all combinations here. Empathetic in the office. Okay, selective at home, attentive at office. That's exactly what, I mean, so I am very, very passive at home. Okay. I have too many things to do. I just don't listen because I'm always doing one other thing or two other things parallelly. So unless and until my emotional support is needed, I'm not empathetic. I'm only passive at home. At work, I want to be active, but I end up being attentive. That is the truth. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Moving on. Okay, let me ask someone. Swati, hi. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. So, when you're talking to someone, what makes you think that they're truly listening to you?
Face expressions, choice of words.
Expressions, choice of words. Okay.
And I think that's more of
Okay.
it.
What else? Anybody else?
Body
Direct eye
language,
contact.
ma'am. Body language.
Eye contact, body language. What about body language? I need specifics. I don't want, broad answers. I want specifics.
Whether they're swaying
They
or
nod.
they are attentive. People are not
Okay.
interested, they start sway or they
Their
start
fish.
scratching.
Okay, they keep moving. Yes, Nimita.
Their facial expressions change according to what you're talking.
Okay,
then-
if they're
then
not
they
having a
nod
straight
sometime.
face, they actually like react to what you're saying. Okay, good. Now, what makes you think somebody is not listening to you?
Same things in the negative sense.
Maybe
Okay.
they just keep nodding and
Not
look
making an
somewhere
eye
else.
contact with you. Not making
They
an
don't
eye
make eye
contact with you.
contact.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, they don't make eye contact. What else?
They don't
Scribbling
respond
around.
as expected.
They're
If they are having some pen
they're
paper.
doodling. Okay, they're doodling. What else?
Doing other
If you
activities.
ask any question or any help or something, they may not be able to answer. So
Doing
that's
other
one.
activities when you're asking, they're not responsive or they give the wrong answers. Okay, great. Okay, so now before we get into how you can actively listen, let's first understand what stops you from actively listening. First one, these are blocks that we're going to discuss. First is intrusion, trying to, interrupt when somebody is speaking. When do you end up interrupting someone when they're speaking? One is when you're trying to impress them or influence them. And two is when you're making assumptions. A lot of times we're very, very excited. We tend to complete somebody else's sentences. When somebody is giving a brief, for example, imagine there's a big project coming up and your boss is giving you a brief. You constantly put your hand up and you keep asking questions. It is a very intrusive thing to do. Why? Because if you just wait for a few seconds, they could probably just, get to that point, right? You're not allowing them to get to that point. Second, the third is zoning out. Like it's not just being passive, it's worse than being passive. You have no recollection of what is happening here. Your mind is elsewhere. Third is establishing judgment and criticism. Do you guys think judgment and criticism can be established only verbally? Can it be established non-verbally? Yeah, Swati is saying yes. How?
Same expressions, doing other things like,
Give
these
me
are not verbal.
specifics. Give me specifics. How do you
Say-
know if you're being judged?
I'm mentioning my problem to someone, but the person is, instead of listening or being empathetic or something, maybe doing something on phone, writing something,
Okay.
doing other activities.
Okay, when they're distracted. Okay. Yes,
And
Nimita.
with the facial
Nimita, you
expression
put up
as
your
well.
hand.
Yeah, if I say tell my problem, if the other person is rolling her eyes, then that's kind of a
Yes,
judgment.
judgment. Yes. Eye rolls. What else? Sorry, Mona, somebody was talking.
Yeah, that's me. I said
Yeah.
even in their facial expression, like raising their eyebrows, rolling their eyes, and
Raising eyebrows, rolling,
yeah,
reacting with their face.
yeah.
Another annoying thing people do, especially at work and even in your personal life, is when they look at their watch. I just get so annoyed when people do that, huh? It's such a judgmental criticize. I mean, it's a very bad criticism. It's very, how do I put it, disrespectful. It's like I'm so boring, or I'm so non-value adding that you think I'm wasting your time. You're taking your time, right? So doing that is another thing. Being restless, constantly moving back and forth, rocking the chair, playing with whatever it is that you're having, right? If you have something on your table, you're just constantly doing this. You're doing this with a pen, you're just lost in your own thoughts. You're scratching the table, whatever it is. Being restless. Distractions that are internal as well as external. External in terms of being distracted by noise, sound of the fan, sound of the AC, sound of drilling that's happening next door, text, messages, phone, looking at your phone, checking your phone out. Now, the thing about these blocks is that they lead to resistance or annoyance in the speaker, leading them to either feel demotivated or simply angry and put off. Now, if the person who's talking to you is someone at par with your level, hierarchically, they are at the same level or below you in the workplace, they might feel demotivated. If they are at the same level or above you specifically, they might get angry, they might feel let down, they might feel put off, right? Now, these are stuff you must, keeping this in mind, these are roles that you might not take up and avoid when you are listening to someone. Stop being a faker. Without listening, don't agree or disagree to anything when your mind is elsewhere. You might get yourself into trouble. Second, do not interrupt at any cost, guys. See, you remember the 3-second rule we discussed in the last session, right? Always count to 3 before you respond to anything in the workplace. Now, the thing is, it's not just a matter of intruding and cutting the conversation, but it's a very disrespectful thing when you interrupt someone because you're making a judgment that they are not going to cover it, right? Always wait for somebody to finish their piece. Your questions and your comments can follow after they're done speaking. If there is a burning comment that you need to make, if there's a burning question you need to ask, please put your hand down, let them recognize you, and then you can speak. It's very, very disrespectful to just interrupt someone when they're speaking. I'm not talking about those brainstorming sessions or discussions that you make. That is when you're discussing. It's a conversation. I'm talking about times when you're being instructed or you're sitting for a conference, you're sitting at a presentation where some stakeholders are presenting something, etc. Right? Do not also at a time where you are not speaking, you're not the primary speaker, don't try to make stuff about yourself in terms of questions, in terms of actions. Do not try to drive focus towards yourself. Let them have their moment. Many people take it very, very personally, especially when this has happened to me in the past. Especially when multiple hierarchies of stakeholders are present. If your boss is present and your super boss is present, especially then, try not to drive attention to yourself because your boss might be extraordinarily pissed, right? And it might stunt your growth at some point in time. It's happened to you. Advice giver. You might have great points to give. You might have great points to make. Okay, inputs that could be life-changing for the company also. Unless it's delivered at a certain time, at a certain place, in a certain way, it's of no use. It could really, put your speaker off. So please be aware of when and where and how you're saying something. Okay. Now, can you open the chat box and give me one adjective, one word that describes an active listener to you? Very, very quickly. Empathetic. Okay. Positive. Responsive. Okay. Attentive. They have the presence of mind. Okay. Open-minded. Great. Okay. Okay. All right. So who is an active listener in the first place? Active listening is when you not only hear what somebody is saying, but you also attune to their thoughts and their feelings. It turns a conversation into an active, most importantly, a non-competitive two-way interaction, right? It's 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 like assertive communication, but the version is that of listening, right? Now, there are three main components to like active listening. So there is an error in the deck over there. It's not effective communication, it's active listening. Okay. So there are three components. There's a cognitive component, there is an emotional component, and there's a behavioral component. What does the word cognitive mean? You guys, what does the word cognitive mean?
Think and
Sorry?
analyze. Think and analyze, I guess.
Okay, thinking and analyzing. Okay. All right. From an active listening perspective, it refers to paying attention to all the information that is both implicit and explicit. Of course, that involves quite an amount of thinking, like you said, and paying attention to the implicit as well as the explicit information that you are receiving from another person, comprehending that and integrating that information is the cognitive component. The emotional component is about handling your own emotions while listening to information. Your behavioral component is how you convey your interest or disinterest and how you comprehend what you cognitively processed in a verbal and a non-verbal manner uh, to your speaker, right? So let's look at each of this in detail. The cognitive component. Now, the first step to listening actively is through paying attention and being completely present and aware, where you do away with all distractions. For instance, when I'm asking one of you all a question and you are responding, and there is a lot of noise in the background, the first thing I do is I go and mute everybody else. so I can fully pay attention to what you're saying, right? That's how I do away with my distraction. So doing away with distractions and being completely present and aware is the first step to cognitively conquer active listening. Okay. Now, sometimes, okay, I might be actively listening. I might be understanding what you're saying. I might be processing it. I might look at all the underlying context, the emotions behind what you're saying. I might get everything. I might be ready to respond in a great way too. But I might be looking like this. And you might think that I'm elsewhere. Now, the thing about active listening is it is only effective when your speaker knows that you're actively listening, right? They have to know that you're actively listening too. It's not just enough that you actively listen. So how do you convey to them that you are listening actively? First is that, I mean, of course, you can use the SOLAR method for this. SOLAR is an acronym for quite a few things, as you see on the screen now. S stands for squarely facing the speaker. When you're talking to someone and they're looking elsewhere, would you ever feel like they're listening? No. So always when somebody is speaking to you, stand or sit in a way that you're facing them straight on. The O and the L part, open posture and leaning in, is supposed to subconsciously make your speaker feel like you are interested in what they have to say. So open posture, see, when someone is listening to you like this versus when they're listening to you like this, there's a huge difference, right? When someone's listening to you like this, you might feel like they're very closed off. They have their own opinions. They are probably judging you a little bit. But when someone is just having their hands out, they have, when you're keeping your arms uncrossed, it reflects openness. It doesn't exactly mean how I'm saying it, but it is supposed to make your speaker feel like you are more receptive if you're not crossing your hands or legs. Okay. Leaning towards the person indicates that you're interested in what they have to say. Eye contact. Using eye contact means that you're listening, right? When someone is looking, when you're talking and I'm facing you, all right? I'm leaning in, I'm not having my hands crossed. All of that is fine. But if I'm looking here, would you even feel like I'm listening? No, it makes no sense. I have to look at you. I have to make eye contact, right? Fifth is relax. You should make sure that all of this SOLE happens naturally, right? It has to be organic. If you try to practice these gestures without sincerity, you will come across as having no interest or trying too hard, right? And the sender will feel like none of what they're trying to say is getting to you. Okay. Now, moving on to the emotional component, which is not mentioned here because it is quite self-explanatory, right? A lot of times there might be situations in the workplace where you feel so irritated, so bored, so how do I put it? You might feel like it's a colossal waste of your time. Somebody might be just saying crap and you know it's not going to work and you feel like it's a big mistake on their part. You might feel very triggered about what somebody is saying. Even one of the situations that we looked at last time, right? When your manager is communicating to the team, but they're blaming you, you might feel so annoyed and so cheated. It makes no sense at all, right? You might feel cornered, you might feel triggered. There are a host of emotions that might just crop up while listening to somebody. But it is important that you do not let it show behaviorally. That's what we're going to be looking at. Now, the behavioral component has a verbal as well as a non-verbal component. First thing, to ensure that your speaker understands that you're actively listening, it is very important that you engage by nodding, smiling, giving appropriate facial reactions, because this will help them feel supported as well as heard. Okay. And the second thing is use silence. Most of us are not comfortable with silence at all. Like even when I'm out with a friend, right? If there is a moment of silence, I have the urge to talk and, just Be done with that silence because it's very awkward. But at the workplace is not the best thing to do. It's very important to let the speaker have the space to think, to construct their thoughts, to articulate their answers. Resist the temptation to interrupt at any cost. Let me just break it down to you very, very straight, okay? People love to talk. People hate to listen. But as twisted as it sounds, they love people who listen. So, if you want to climb up the social ladder at the workplace, if you want to come off as someone who's trustworthy, if you want to come off as someone who's easy to work with, someone who's approachable, all you have to do is listen. Let them talk. Let them talk however long they want. Okay. The biggest mistake people make is that they don't listen, which is why they end up hating each other. Okay. You might even notice this in your personal life. You are always annoyed when your partner doesn't listen to you, but the moment, whether it's going into their head or not, if they're not interrupting, if they hear you out, you feel so much better because all that you want to do sometimes is to vent. You don't want solutions, you just want to vent sometimes, right? So it always works when you want to build trust, when you want to make friends. The easiest way is to listen. I'm not saying you shouldn't talk, but when someone's talking, don't ever interrupt. Don't. Just don't. Listen. As long as they go on, please listen. Verbal compliment. Okay. It is very important to provide verbal affirmations like, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. I absolutely agree. No, I'm completely in line with what you're saying. Right? You have to give these verbal affirmations and moderations to show your agreement or disagreement. Okay. And at the end of every conversation, check with your speaker by summarizing, not paraphrasing. What is the difference between summarizing and paraphrasing? Can you tell me? Shilpa, hi, are you here? Can someone tell me what the difference between summarizing and paraphrasing is? You guys.
Summarizing is overall telling the key points of what was discussed in the call. This is Priya here.
Hi,
And
Priya,
paraphrase,
yes.
yeah, hi. So summarizing is basically noting down the key points and only mentioning that as what was the key points that was discussed, an action item. So it's an overall understanding of what that call was. Paraphrasing is basically you're trying to rephrase, in your own words of what the person exactly spoke statement by statement.
Spot on, right? Paraphrasing, summarizing, both of these involve reiterating in your own words. However, paraphrasing doesn't involve any shortening. A summary by default is a shorter version of the original. So you only say about 20-25% of the original when you're summarizing. So don't ever paraphrase at work. Always summarize. When you end up paraphrasing, right? You look like someone who's stealing credit. So which is when you're checking after the end of every conversation, always summarize what the speaker said and check if you've understood or if you comprehended that message as they've intended it. Okay. If at the end of every meeting, when you're checking for action points or anything, please find out if you've done a good job of understanding what they meant. Okay. Last one. Pinpoint what you want to know more about and probe with open-ended question. What is an open-ended question?
Questions that does not have a yes or no answer.
Absolutely. Who gave me that answer? Nimita. Okay, great. That's exactly right. So don't ask questions like, isn't this what you meant? It's important that you keep it open-minded, right? They shouldn't be able to give you, yes, that's what I meant, or no, that's not what I meant, right? Firstly, especially when you're trying to come off as an active listener, first establish that you've understood, right? You first tell them, you're absolutely right. I think we definitely have to restructure our onboarding process. And I agree with that. But can you tell me more about how exactly you see this panning out in the next 6 months? You are nudging them to give you more information. You are being curious. You're encouraging them to explore their idea more and give you more, right? So that's what you're gonna do if you are a active listener. Okay. Now moving on, what are the different ways to show that you're an active listener when you're on a virtual call like this, but you're on mute and your camera is off? How do you show that you're actively listening?
By typing in the chat.
Okay, chat. What else?
Answering to questions that is put in the call.
Answering questions, both correct. What else?
Raising hands and participating in the discussions wherever possible.
Correct,
wherever
correct. Can
required.
everyone? Yes. See, most of your online or virtual meeting interfaces have reactions. Use those reactions, right? Can everyone give me a reaction or a raised hand right now on Zoom? Okay, okay, okay. Great, great to know that all of you are able to, do that. Okay, okay. Put your hands down. Oh, okay, great. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Great. Okay, so this is awesome. Thank you so much. For telling me that you know how this is used, right? The thing about this is, firstly, mentioning stuff on chat is great, but that can be intrusive too. Please use it in moderation, right? You can't keep typing paragraphs out or keep sending messages every 3 seconds, and that still counts as intrusion. So don't do that as much. Try to react. Second thing is respond quickly, right? Like Nimita correctly said, a lot of us, it's very easy when the camera is off, or even when we have to keep our camera on, we can very cleverly say that, I'm having bandwidth issues. I'm just gonna, keep my camera off so you can hear me clearly. And then turn the camera off, we go on mute, we end up scrolling YouTube shorts, scrolling on Instagram. Now, the thing about this is, the moment someone asks you a question, you would say that, hey, can you repeat that last part? I completely lost you. Your voice was breaking up. Everybody knows that you weren't listening. I understand the temptation to do something else, especially on a boring call, but find the middle ground, right? When your camera is off, when your mic is off, and you have nothing else to say or do, at least find a way to passively listen instead of completely wandering off elsewhere and not knowing what you're talking about. What I do is I end up playing a game that doesn't require me to pay attention, like 2024 or 2048 or something. Something that doesn't require me to pay attention. So I can passively listen at least. If not, I definitely do not suggest that you go and scroll. It's the worst idea. It is career suicide. Don't do that. At least find a middle ground that will help you passively listen. So when someone asks you something, you would at least be able to give them something, if not the entire thing. Okay. At least if you should be able to summarize, if not paraphrase. Okay. And like Nimita said, respond as quickly as possible. Remember to, or you could just take notes. Sometimes what I do is, if I don't want to pay attention at all, I pretend like I'm taking down the minutes, although I'm not responsible for it. I'll pretend like I'm taking down the minutes. I'll at least be attentively listening. If I'm not processing it, at least if I go back to my notes, something is there. So find your middle ground, find what works for you. Do not always wander off. It's very, very easy when your camera is off to not feel there might not be that, how do I put it, accountability. So it will be very easy for you to go back and scroll or do something else, probably even cook. I've done that. I will be on meetings with my super boss and I'll still be cooking, right? Something else. So it's very, very easy to do that. Don't try not to do that. Yeah. Moving on to jargons. Now, what was a jargon when you first joined, right? During your first job, what was a jargon that really threw you off? You had no clue about until you found out what it was. What was that? Put it in the chat box. Guys, respond. All of you are slow typers or what? Shilpa says BAU. Yes, business as usual. Nimita says EOD, end of day. Okay, what else? FYI, for your information as soon as possible. What else? Be right back. What's COB? What is COB? This is the first time I'm saying COB. By the way, OOS, I don't know. I know OOO. That was very weird for me, you know. People write, I am OOO tomorrow. What does that mean? I read it as I am ooh tomorrow. What does that mean, right? It made no sense to me until I understood it was out of office. Okay, POC, point of contact. What is OF is out of office only. Okay, great. PFB, please find below ETA estimated time of arrival. Okay, okay. Now let's go and understand all these very regularly used everyday corporate jargon, what they mean and what they actually mean. Okay. So what does EOD mean? EOD means that it's by the end of the day. A tricky thing about EOD is your EOD is very different from your clients many times, and your manager's idea of EOD might be very different from yours too. So whenever somebody says EOD, ensure that you guys are on the same page when it comes to what time it is. So try to focus on the timing instead of the EOD as a phrase, right? But when someone says, I need this done by EOD, I'll need that report on my desk by EOD, what they really mean is drop everything you're doing and take care of this first. I'm not going to be ready to hear any ifs or buts, right? Okay, hard stop. What does hard stop mean? Anybody? What does hard stop mean?
Hard stop is you have to
Stopping
definitely
the
stop
meeting.
after
Yeah.
that. Yes, you at a particular time, and it's definitely a stop. There's no
Right. No more
ifs and
dragging,
buts.
like
Yeah.
Swati correctly mentions. Right. So, you know, the meeting has to stop at an agreed upon time because they need to be somewhere else. When someone says they have a hard stop, it is time for you to really wake up, be very, very concise, use your 7 C's to communicate very, 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 very shortly. Right. Get straight to the point instead of beating around the bush. Specifically because when someone says they have a hard stop, it is mostly because they don't believe anything good is going to come out of that conversation. They know it's not going to go anywhere. That's probably why they're saying they have a hard stop at a certain time. Right? Circle back. What does circle back mean?
Coming back to the previous discussion or something.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Revisiting.
So, correct. For instance, if you have some questions, concerns, or remarks about this thing that you said earlier, and you would like to address them now, I'd like to circle back to what you said just before, you know, getting into the project brief, right? This could be of two variations. One is, you know, let's circle back to this thing a little later when it's a little less important, or when someone is very cleverly trying to change the topic. You're just like, nice try changing the subject. I see you, but I'm not letting that happen. Let's circle back to this thing, right? So it could mean either of these things. What does let's align mean? Aligning. What does that mean? What aligning means is basically ensuring that everybody is on the same page and that there are no misunderstandings or differing interpretations of the same thing. For example, before we proceed with the client meeting, let's all internally align on the key talking points and objectives, right? So that's what aligning means, being on the same page.
Like
And-
everybody is
and-
on point.
Correct. And park it. What does park it mean?
Stopping it for the time being.
Take it back
Set
later.
aside.
Absolutely. Set aside a discussion or postpone a decision to a later time, right? We have limited time in this meeting, so let's park this issue for now and continue our next discussion point. What it really means is that, hey, I'm not going to talk about this right now. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't deserve my time right now, especially when your manager is saying that, right? or let's park that idea, which means you're never probably going to get back there. It is not worth exploring, right? Low hanging fruit, what does that mean?
Easy to do thing, easy
Correct,
to achieve.
absolutely. For instance, it refers to easily achievable goals or tasks, right? For instance, someone could say, let's pick the low hanging fruit first for some quick wins, right? So you need to pay attention to the context in which this is used at the workplace, because it can be a tricky one. It can mean two things. One is someone's actually giving you direction that you have to work smarter, not harder. But it could also mean that they are saying you're doing only the bare, you're not even doing the bare minimum. You need to put in more effort, and they're telling you what to do, right? Could mean both these things. What does a buy-in mean? Anybody? Buy-in. So what it means is
I'm
that
not
before you can,
accepting that or something like that.
no.
No.
Before we can continue, we have to make sure that everybody agrees with the plan, is when you use the word buy-in. We need to get everybody's buy-in before we proceed with this project. Now, how is this different from aligning? Aligning is more on a low level, being on the same page, cutting back on the misunderstanding standpoint. A buy-in is more leaning towards an approval standpoint for high stake decisions, right? That is, do I have your buy-in on this? Means, do I have your approval on this, right? It's alternately used for approvals, right? What it really means is that you don't want to put in hours of work, and when it doesn't work out, you don't want everyone to point fingers at you, so you're taking approvals. That's when you ask, we need to get everybody's buy-in on this project, right? Bandwidth, what does bandwidth mean?
It's the time to do something, bandwidth.
Absolutely, it's just a fancier way of asking or telling if you have the time to perform a task at work, or asking someone if they have the time to perform a task. It's just more corporate, more professional, or that's how it's considered, right? Do you have the time to do this versus, would you have the bandwidth to take this up? Sounds more legitimate. It's just to sound fancier. That's all. Okay. Now, open the chat box and tell me your line of work and one technical jargon. See, what we saw just now are everyday corporate jargons. This doesn't have a specific industry to it, right? Every industry uses these generic jargons. I want you to give me technical jargons like this that are specific to your industry. For instance, I am in the advertising industry. So what we call the script of an advertisement, say a TV advertisement or video advertisement, even a static image that you see on Instagram, the words that are there or the script of it is called as copy. Copy is the technical term that we use for it. Like that, open the chat box, give me your technical jargon in your line of work. Okay, don't give me like, okay, out of the box. Scrum of scrums. Yes, what does scrum of scrums mean, Swati?
So basically, these days companies are working in agile way. So in agile,
correct.
there are scrums. So on top of scrums, there is scrum which happens across the organization to understand what is
Can
happening.
you use
across
SOS in a sentence and show me how it's used?
We have a SOS aligned tomorrow.
Awesome. Right. Something like that. Okay. Great. I want technical jargons like this. Okay. TDD, test driven development. Satya, can you tell me more about that?
Hi, I'm Satya. I'm into quality assurance in
Okay.
testing. So
Uh-huh.
when we, so TDD is a framework we use.
Can you use that in a sentence for me?
We can say that this application needs a TDD framework to start testing.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Got it. Bani says FSD, functional design document. Bani, can you explain?
Yes, it's basically you take the requirements from the customer, put it into a document. So, and then you give it to the development team for how it needs to be developed.
Okay, okay. And how will you say, imagine I'm a colleague, can you use it in a sentence for me?
Uh, uh, Please make an FST from the client requirements and give it to the technical team for to start the development.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And then Nimita says proof of concept. Yes, Nimita.
Yeah, proof of concept is something like you make a prototype of whatever functionality doing. First, you make a prototype, and then you present it to client. So
Okay.
same thing.
And what line of
Solution.
work does this come under for the benefit of the class?
This is actually a development work. It
Okay,
like
okay. Can you use it in a sentence for us?
uh, probably my manager will say like, I want this proof of concept to be ready by like on this day. That way.
Okay.
This is
All
like
right.
basically we are making a prototype and then get ready,
Okay. And what is
presenting it.
solution pack? SP.
Solution pack is same thing, but it will be like a document will be there and many such proof of concepts will be there, and then we will be presenting
So a
it to the
collection of
client.
proof of concepts is SP.
And it will be presenting to client like kind of a meeting in a meeting.
Okay, okay. Swati, you mentioned LLD and HLD.
Yeah. So in software development, once the requirements are gathered, it goes through a HLD and LLD process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you would say that after LLD and HLD is done, we'll move on to this page.
Coding phase. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Great. So looks like all of you all are already like, up to speed on a lot of technical jargon. So in case anything got missed, you can maybe look at this particular link to see if you've missed something on an every basis. But honestly, if one little thing I would suggest is, especially in a new workplace, right? The people are different, the nomenclature is different, the lingo they speak is very different. Before you go and ask someone what a certain thing is, try Googling it, okay? If you do not get the answer in Google, then go and ask someone. Because people are very, very quick to judge, right? If you do not know something, I'm not saying you shouldn't ask something, but I'm saying if it's a Googleable thing, that's one thing I learned in my first job. If there is something that's Googleable, avoid asking that to somebody, right? You're just, it's not that people are going to judge you just because you ask one question, but it's the amount of effort you put into developing yourself without letting judgment come in the way, right? That's all about it. Okay. Impactful presentation. Now, in the beginning of this particular uh, session, I told you to make note of what works for you about this particular presentation and what doesn't. So who's going to tell me? Swati. Hi, you're the last person to speak and the first on my list. So what about this particular PowerPoint Google slide deck worked for you?
I mean, I normally use this one, Google Slide, or these days we have this AI
No, no,
based
no, no.
option.
About this, so this session, I've been projecting a slide, right? I've been projecting a presentation. Now, what about this presentation, like, worked for you as a listener,
Yeah.
as an
So
attendee?
correct. So I was able to understand that exactly what are the specifications which are contributing to make the effective communication. Till now we know the gist about it, but since you have made it more specific, I think that is something I can see it's making impact.
Okay, okay. Yes, Satya.
I think highlighting the most, the presentation in the deck, you have highlighted the words, right, to easily eye-catchable.
Okay, right. Like this. The word jargon is highlighted like that.
Yes.
Okay, okay. What else, guys? Yes, Mona.
I think the key points and keeping it short and simple, that work for me. I mean, it is easy
Okay.
to understand as well,
Okay.
particularly specific words and the I can say the sentences.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Nimita.
Yeah, what worked for me is there was a agenda initially, and you followed the agenda, like, and the
Okay.
flow was like correct, right? Whatever was there in the agenda, the flow was in the same way, and it went
Okay.
smoothly, like from concept to concept. It's
Mm-hmm.
like complexity was like increasing, and like we were able to follow it.
Okay. You were able to follow through with it and it logically made sense. Okay.
That
So
logical flow was good.
great. Great. All of y'all, has anyone been in a place where you had to make a presentation and slash or present it to an audience at work before this? Yeah, yeah, I can see that Swati is nodding,
Yeah.
Nimita is nodding, Mona is nodding, Priya is also raised her hand. Okay. So when you were either making a presentation or presenting it to an audience, what was your biggest challenge? What did you think was the most difficult part? Think about it and put it in the chat box. Let me get to it once I'm done explaining, in case my explanations do not give you an answer. Okay. But put it now. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. So Shilpa has told me it was to the point. White background helped emphasize the text. Text was highlighted wherever difference had to be shown. Okay. Great. Now, speaking of impactful presentations, there are 4 key parts to it. But before I get there, right? Senior executives are one of the toughest crowds you'll face as a presenter. They are incredibly impatient because either their schedules are actually jam packed or they pretend to be very busy, and they have to make a lot of high stake decisions, often with very little time to weigh in the options. So they will definitely not sit still for a long presentation with a big reveal in the end. So before I get into telling you how to make an impactful presentation, remember this as a thumb rule. You're never going to build up to a point, you're always going to break a point down. You mention your point, you then break it down. You're not going to give supporting information and build up an argument. That will never work when you're, especially when you're presenting to senior executives or any audience for that matter. Breaking down works a lot better than building up. Okay. Uh, it can be very, very frustrating. You probably have a lot to say to them, and this might be your only chance, but they will just interrupt you before you get to your point. That will always happen. Firstly, be mentally prepared for it, and I'll tell you how you can let it. You can get to a point where it doesn't affect you. Okay. First thing, research. 2 types of research. One is researching your content. Second, most important and mostly just ignored, is researching your audience. Okay. First, as far as your content is concerned, get your facts right. Bridging the gap of knowledge can give you an instant confidence boost because you know what you're talking about. And you're going to be spending enough amount of time making this presentation and preparing for it. There's no way you can go wrong about it. But before you get to researching or making your points, articulating them, understand the brief first. Break down what you need to do. Understand whom you're talking to, understand what you're trying to talk about, what you have to talk about, and what is the end result. What is the probable result that is expected out of this presentation? Are you just breaking down the problem? Are you giving them, are you going to suggest solutions? Are you going to weigh in different types of solutions and which one is better? Are you going to end up with a discussion and a brainstorm? What is it? Make it clear. If it's not clear to you from the brief that's given to you, go back to the source and understand what it is. Question them. Ask them what it is. Okay. Whether it's your manager, whether it's your colleague, whoever it is, figure out what needs to be done first. Second, research your audience. As an advertiser, I've understood it the hard way that researching your audience is very important because it makes a, a it makes getting a favorable result much easier, right? It's always easy to please somebody you know instead of playing a guessing game and trying to figure out what they might like, right? Firstly, understand who are the stakeholders who are going to be present in the meeting. What are they like? And based on your understanding of what the brief is, What is the probable result? What are you working towards? Get your goals straight, because only when you know what needs to be done can you actually work towards it. Otherwise, you're just making a presentation. I know there's going to be a lot of fuss about having to prepare a presentation, being under a microscope, so many people looking at it, your fright, your stage fright, having to go and talk to people. This might all be a huge deal. But don't forget the basics in the rush to, figure the rest of it out. Okay, this is the basic. Now, once you've collected all this information, how do you put it forward? How do you articulate it? When it comes to articulation, you must understand that an audience cannot listen to your presentation and read a detailed text-heavy slide at the same time, not without missing key parts of what you're saying and what's on the slide as well. Right? Ensure that your slides pass the glance test, which means people should be able to comprehend each slide within 3 seconds of looking at it. Within 3 seconds. Let me go to my most text heavy slide. Okay. This is one of my most text heavy slides. Rest of it has like only a couple of words there. Okay. Even this one, right? It's very text heavy if you look at it. But within 3 seconds, if you look at it, you will be able to see that this is about a behavioral component of something. It has two subcomponents, which is verbal and non-verbal, and there are 3 points each. Very, very simple. It's formatted in a way where it's easy to understand. Again, these are technical jargons. I've put in 7 points here. But the moment you read the title, you understand these are everyday tech jargons that I'm talking about. And those are just examples. That's what I'm going to talk about. Right? So ensure that your formatting is in a way where it is easy for them to understand. I personally believe that nobody should be reading off of a slide. Whatever you have to say need not be up there on your slide. You're not an AI voice text to speech tool. You're a human person. You're there to add value. You're there to make some points. So put as less text as possible in your slide. Keep whatever you want to say in a separate speaker note, right? Speaking of notes, right? There's no shame in having notes. It doesn't matter, okay? This is the 4th time I'm taking this session. And even if the next session that I will be taking, your interview readiness session, is something I've done 70 times over, okay? And I still can't go through that session without my speaker notes. It's not that I don't know what I'm talking about. It's just that it helps me deliver what I want to say without missing any points. So what's the shame in having notes? It's okay. I literally write down everything I want to say in a bullet point format. See, sometimes I even write down sentences because I know I can read off of a sentence and I can actually make it seem like I'm talking it. That's my talent. But most people cannot do that. So do not write down entire sentences. Put down bullet points so you can remember and articulate it in a way you want to. For me, I am so scared of messing up that if I don't write down full sentences, I feel anxious that I might miss something, which is why I write down full sentences. Everything I'm saying, whatever extra I'm saying is fine, but my base points are all fully written in my speaker notes. Even right now, I have my speaker notes on. I'm looking at it, I'm reading off of it sometimes. Right? If you notice closely, when I'm talking key points, I'll be looking at this part of this screen, which means I'm reading off of my speaker notes, right? So there's no shame in having your notes. Always have them ready. It's okay. All right. And when you're articulating, remember that these people are not listening to you. It's your job to help them listen. Begin by discussing an agenda for the presentation before getting into each section in detail. Always use a top-down approach, not a bottom-up approach. Don't build up to something, break down every single thing. See, for instance, in this session, right, I began with the agenda. I told you we're going to discuss 3 key things. I gave you very quick idea of what each of these things are, right, which helped you understand what was in store. You know what to look forward to. Maybe you're someone who's more interested in impactful presentations a lot more than active listening. So you might passively listen through the active listening part, and you might be actively listening through the impactful presentation part. Subconsciously, this is happening, right? So does your this is exactly what will happen with your listeners and your attendees when you're presenting as well. especially when you're presenting to the leadership, right? A lot of times it's happened to me that when I'm presenting the agenda itself, they'll say, can we just skip straight to this part? Because they don't want to hear the introduction they already know about. That doesn't mean you can't have introductions, you have to have them. But if you don't have an agenda, they're going to wait, they're going to look at their watch, they're going to be restless, they're going to make you nervous, they're going to do everything that will shatter your confidence, right? So always begin with an agenda, always begin with a summary, and ensure that this summary is like your entire presentation in short. It should tell them enough to entice and convince them to listen through towards till the end, right? Keep your slides clean, keep it simple, have a logical flow. Keeping it clean, see, the thing is, I know you might be putting a lot of effort into making your presentation beautiful, but please ensure that there is some logical flow to how beautiful you make it. The color, the font, the formatting, it has to be uniform. If you look at it, okay, for instance, this particular slide, okay, wait, where is this? Right. Now, this cognitive component and the behavior component, we move from the key parts of active listening to the cognitive component and then to the behavioral component. Now, this is a different looking slide, but these are two similar ones. So they look similar. There's some logical flow to it. And if you look at it, just where the exact place where the word cognitive is placed is exactly where the word behavioral is also placed. Not 1 centimeter up, not 1 centimeter down. You might think that these are very trivial issues. What if it is 1 centimeter up? It might not make a huge it might not make a lot of sense to you right now. But firstly, sloppy work is not, I mean, people only pay attention to you when you make a mistake. Don't give them a chance to, right? Firstly, sloppy work not only, shows that you have done a sloppy work, but it also distracts your listener unconsciously. They're going to be thinking something is wrong. It's much easier for them to concentrate if things are placed the way they should, right? I'm not saying you don't have to do the hard work. You can do smart work too. Go on to slides to go. See, you can use tools such as Canva, you can use Prezi, but all of this needs, some amount of skill and talent. But if you're someone who's only comfortable using Google Slides or PPT, then you can just go on to this website called Slides to Go. Okay, it's called Slides 2, the number 2 and Go. And it will give you ready-made templates where you don't have to sit in align. This presentation, the last presentation that I made, maybe, okay, I can show you a few more examples of the presentations I've made also. Everything begins with an agenda, everything. See, even here, right? Imagine this is like this, okay? If I'm in a slideshow and if I'm moving from this to this, you see that just this initiate conversations is not aligned. Doesn't it make you think that something is wrong? You're going to be focused more on that. So don't give that chance. When you're using templates like this presentation, the effective communication presentation, this particular thing, all of this is something I picked from Slides to Go. It's ready. You don't have to sit and ensure that the formatting is right. You don't have to ensure that it is in the right place. It's aligned properly, right? Do smart work. You don't have to work hard. Again, the colors have to be uniform. Now, if you notice, this has 2 different colors, but there's still a logical flow to it. This is the title slide. This is another section break, which is in blue color. And number 2 section is in blue color. The rest of it is in off-white, right? There is some logical flow to why a slide is in a certain color, right? Same applies to this. The design in which this particular thing is the same as the next slide break. If you see, just the word is changing, the placement is not changing. Similarly, this one too, right? When I'm changing, I'm trying to emphasize that we're going to talk about the hero idea first, right? And then we're going to talk about the hub idea. Then we're talking about the hygiene idea, right? It's formatted in a way where it's easy visually to imbibe what I'm trying to say. So use these tools that will help you do that. Okay. And moving on to what I was saying about articulation, please format your slides, ensure your fonts, your placement of text, your colors, are all uniform. Visual inconsistency can be very off-putting and unprofessional. Please pay more attention to that. And I've also already given you the tools. I'm just gonna drop copies of that in the group chat for those of you all who want to use these tools. You can. Please make note of it. Okay. Moving on to preparation. Now, regardless of how beautiful your presentation is, regardless of how many hours of work you put into making that presentation, if you think you're going to go there and wing it, there is a very good chance that it might not work. I'm not saying it will never work, but there's a very good chance that it might not. Before presenting, please ensure you at least do one dry run. More than that, if possible, but at least one by yourself or preferably with a colleague or somebody who knows, so you can understand if your message is coming through clearly and quickly. Are you able to boil everything down in your summary in a skimmable key insights format? Are you missing anything that your audience is likely to expect? Right? Most importantly, one thing people miss doing is timing their rehearsal. A lot of times you think you're going to spend only 5 minutes through the presentation, but just the first slide will take 15 minutes. Right? It might not work. You always have to time yourself. Always during your dry run, time yourself, see how much time you have. Also check with someone who gave you the brief that how much time you have to present before you get started. Right? Presentation. Now, I'm not talking about beauty standards or anything, but please dress sharp. Please be presentable. I'm not asking you to dress up, but you have to be presentable at least. There's a difference between looking like this and going like that, right? Don't do that. Try to be presentable. For me, I prefer to dress up when I'm trying to present because I'm someone who's very conscious about how I look. That always bothers me. So if I dress up, I know I have one thing less to worry about. I know I'm looking good. It makes me feel confident. So I do it. So find out what makes you feel confident. Do that. Be presentable. Reach before time. And find a calming ritual. I am someone who gets extraordinarily tensed and worked up before a presentation. So what I do is before I go in for a class, I boil water and I look at it boiling. Okay. I always have hot water with me before a class. And when I look at it, it somehow calms me down. Okay. If you are someone like me who feels anxious, find a calming ritual, find what works for you and do that. Have your notes offline and ready. A lot of times it's happened to me that, like I said, okay, without speaker notes, it's not that I don't know what I'm talking about, but I get very flustered. Just the anxiety of missing something out throws me off my game. So what I did was I was going to this college for placement training. It was my first placement training in person. And it was such a strange experience. Okay. I'm always used to taking online classes. I went and projected. And usually, I don't know if you're able to see, you might not be able to see this, but when you're presenting on Google Slides, on presenter view, there is a separate speaker notes that comes in a different tab. So when you're sharing your screen, that doesn't come up. Right now, you're only seeing my screen. You're not seeing my speaker notes, but it's always there on screen, okay? But when you're in an offline class and you're presenting, whatever comes on your screen comes up there in the projected screen. So I couldn't have my speaker notes up and I was flustered throughout the class. So, hard lesson learned. Always, and once when I was having my speaker notes in my phone separately, there was no reception in that place. There was no data. I couldn't reach looking at it. So always have your notes offline and ready, either in a digital format or in the form of written down notes, whatever works for you. Have it ready with you and have it offline. Next, very, very important. And the last point I'm about to make in this session. People will always remember the first and the last things you say in a presentation. This is due to something called as the recency and primacy effect. You can read up about it if you're interested. But the thing about inexperienced speakers is that they often remember to have strong introductions, but towards the end of their presentation, it just fizzles out by the time you get towards the end. Especially if you have too much content and you're not timed yourself, you tend to rush things towards the end. And it makes no sense. It doesn't leave that impact. How many of you guys have been to a stand-up show or watched a stand-up show online also? You watched a joke, a stand-up, anything? Anybody? Yes? Yes, yeah. See, if you notice, right, stand-up comics start with their second best joke, they end with their best joke. Because if someone walks out of that auditorium without a good laugh, they're going to think the entire show was crap. So they never open with their best joke. They open with their second best joke, but their best joke is always the last one. That is how much impact a final, the last thing you say means. Which is why always prepare not just your introduction, but your conclusion as well. How can you conclude effectively? One, you can try summarizing what you said. I usually do it at the end of the class if I have time. Summarize what you say. But especially even if you do not have the time to summarize or you don't remember how to summarize, please end with clear action points or call to action. What do you want the people to do after the presentation? Do they have to break for questions? Do they have to break for discussion? What is it? What are the clear action points? What are the next steps? Please mention that very, very clearly. And don't make that mistake of, not having a strong exit point. Make sure that your presentation finishes on a strong note with clear call to actions for everybody present in the presentation or your concluding statement if you don't have any action points. Okay. And that was my time today. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope you learned something new. I hope this session added value to you as a restarter. I'm going to be dropping my relevant links, including my, salary negotiation session and my job search tracker. Please go through it. And in case you want to stay in touch, please connect with me on Instagram or on LinkedIn. Right now, I will be entertaining 1 or 2 questions. Oh, thank you so very much. I can see a lot of phrases coming in the chat box. Thank you so very much for that. Right now, if anybody has any doubts, any questions, I will be able to take 1 or 2. If you have more questions, join in early in the next session. I will be taking your interview readiness session as well, fortunately or unfortunately. So you can join in early on the interview readiness session and ask your questions too, or pass on your questions to Avneet or Renekia. They will send it to me and I will send my response. Okay, does anyone have any questions for me? Any doubts? No? I was so clear. Wow. I'm gonna
I
pack that.
have
Okay. Yes, just
some,
when I thought I tasted sweet victory. Nimita has a question. Yes.
yeah, sometimes appraisal meetings or something happen in an informal settings,
Mm.
like something in a office cafe or something. So how interact, there are lots of distractions in that place.
Mm-hmm.
So how to go about that? Uh,
See, honestly, what decides how much attention you're going to pay to something? One is either interest, or the second thing is how much value it holds to you. Both of it is covered, right? When you're trying to have a salary negotiation or an appraisal in the cafe also, because it's such a high stake thing, you should be able to focus. If not, I think the best, if you feel like it's too distracting an environment for you, I think the only way forward is to tell your manager or your HR that could we please do it at a more silent place. And also, way before your appraisal comes to a place where it happens, I think you should be armed with all your facts on why you need that bump or that promotion, right? So if you're ready with what you have to say, the distractions won't matter much. Yeah. There's no other way. You have to tell them that you need a better place to talk. All right. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other question? Okay. I have 6 new messages. Great session. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining in, everybody. Okay, looks like nobody else has a question. Thank you so very much for joining in.
This is Vani here.
Hi, Vani.
Yes, actually, this is not regarding the session. This is regarding the last session. I remember you telling that you were a little underconfident. You stammered while speaking initially. So how did you overcome that?
Uh, I basically faked it till I made it. Okay. So the thing is, I'm a dancer. I used to be in the drama troupe as well. So I am a decent actor. So it was easy for me to fake my way through it until I got my confidence that I'm making sense, right? But in terms of speaking, right? I think I I consciously put myself. So there is your comfort zone, there is your discomfort zone. There's always this little wriggle room in between where it doesn't threaten you so much to move a little away from your comfort zone, right? So I found that place for myself. So I was in my debate club. I used to use this app called Clubhouse. I think it's still there, where there are different meeting rooms. You can just join random rooms and talk to strangers, right? So I during COVID, this was a huge hit. People were there. So during COVID, I got onto Clubhouse. I ended up speaking to a lot of people, and that way I was able to like slowly get over my fear. But what always helped me was bridging the gap of knowledge. For me, if I know to myself that I know my shit, I'll be able to convince someone. If I feel like I don't know enough, I'll always be nervous. That is one thing that was about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vani. I hope that helped. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for joining in. Have a great Tuesday ahead. I will see you again during the interview readiness session. Bye bye. Have a good day.
Thank you, Ati.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies, we'll wrap up for the day. Okay, tomorrow we are having session on speed mentoring at 11 a.m. Please be available. Okay, already calendar invite has sent. Please be available on time. Okay, bye bye everyone. Have a great evening.